and welcome to the Gaslec Podcast. This is episode 73, if you can't read the sign behind me. In this week's episode, we've got some listeners' questions that we're going to get answered. We're also covering the history of the humble pipe cutter that we all use within plumbing and heating. And I have the top 5 things to check before calling out a heating engineer this winter. So this and some more in this week's podcast. But first of all, here's my friend Sean to tell you a bit more about the podcast. Homeowner that likes a bit of DIY, or are you a business owner and wanted a bit more knowledge before you make some decisions on your plumbing and heating? Stay tuned to the podcast and hopefully, and welcome back, and thank you very much indeed for listening, guys. If you're listening on Spotify and watching the video, you can see my ugly movie on there or on our YouTube channel. We also, obviously, across all the audio-only platforms, and this episode is going to be audio-only friendly. I don't really have anything to show or demonstrate to you guys, so hopefully it's a bit of information for everybody, however you're listening or watching to us here. So this week's episode, we've got some listeners' questions. I'll get them done first. So we've had some people, they email us in bits and pieces on the podcast on the email address, which is podcast@gaslec.net. So I never like to read out the people's names because some people feel a bit silly doing it. So I just blanket across the board. You know who you are because you're one of our frequent listeners, and thank you very much indeed for listening. So one of the questions I got asked is, what area of work is the dirtiest within what we do? So probably the most obvious place, most people will say, will be doing toilets or macerators. And those are the box pumps at the back of the toilet that take, we'll just call it the solids and the liquids. And it has a blade that chops it up and then pumps it through a smaller diameter pipe. So that can then go up and then horizontal and drop down as well. So if you're in a bit of a tight spot for if you're in a bit of a place like an understairs cupboard, for instance, and you want to put a toilet in there for convenience, but you can't get the soil pipe out, then some people will use these macerator type toilet things, made by companies like Saniflow and stuff like that. So initially you'd say that that's probably the most dirtiest job. But here at Gaslec, we don't do that many toilet works, and certainly on repairing sort of the macerator side. So for me personally, probably the dirtiest job really for us, is going to be catering. So within the gas industry and the commercial side, we have catering. So that's pubs, hotels, restaurants that have got a commercial kitchen. And then off the back of that, there's another qualification you could do, which is mobile catering, like your burger van type things. And I'll probably say of all the jobs we do, probably the stereotypical burger van is probably the dirtiest that we get involved with. It's a bit of a tight space. For whatever reason, let's say the pulling of the stuff out and cleaning behind isn't as frequent, let's just say, as if you had a restaurant where you had a bit more space in the kitchen to do so. Probably also the limited amount of cleaning products that if it's in a fixed location, and the amount of water that you can use for cleaning, you can't, it's not that practical to be throwing loads of boiling water over to help with the cleaning process. But in a fixed commercial catering place, that's a lot simpler to do. So it's probably off the back of that. That's why it doesn't get treated as well. And within catering, it's going to be a little bit controversial. It's a bit of an area that's a bit of what we call the Wild West within Gaslec. It's a sort of a bit of an area that sort of falls between a couple of cracks really within Gaslec. I think there's not enough of it out there for Gaslec to really get involved with. If you think about the amount of domestic boilers and gas hobs and cookers and fires and stuff that we have, then we look at the amount of catering, and then certainly then the mobile catering off the back of that. It's actually a very small percentage, and it really does get overlooked. And there's more mobile catering jobs, let's just say, that I turn down than what I will accept. So we like to get the pictures in first before we turn the wheel, before we leave the door of the office to go and look at one of these jobs. I want to look at it first on pictures, because there's plenty of these that have been put together in converted horse boxes with rubber hoses everywhere. I've gone into this before on previous podcasts. But yeah, so a lot of the time these things ain't really up to current standards. They're being done on, for whatever reason, they've been done very DIY, let's just say. So yeah, one of the dirtiest jobs that I certainly do here is on the catering side. So this week, talking about the dirty side, we had one of our team members went to a job, and I didn't know about it at the time because I would have told him to stop there and then and told him to leave site, because it's not something that I've never actually come across within the plumbing and heating industry. And we was working in a domestic property. That's all I'll describe it as. And they had a massive cockroach infestation. So we went there, opened up the boiler casing. It was an alpha boiler, was full of cockroaches running around. They were inside the boiler, sort of PCB area, and they were they were squeezing anywhere really. And if I'd have known that, I would have told him to stop there and then and to completely leave. But he carried on and got the job done. And one of the other things he had to do was to turn the gas hob on to double check. And as he did so, he turned the switch on the fuse spur. Some cockroaches fell out of the fuse spur onto the kitchen worktop and run off. And then as the burner was burning, it come up and warmed up the extractor above, and the cockroaches were dropping out of the back of the extractor down onto the worktop by the gas hob. And I've been to this property before, and I'll tell you, they've got 2 small children in this property as well. So it's a rented place, so it's been reported back to the landlord. So that's the first time we've ever come across that here at Gaslec. So yeah, I'm not sure what happened, how it's happened, but yeah, they've got a massive infestation, and it's a domestic flat. It's not even a commercial catering job. It's not a place where they have whatever, processing meat or anything like that. So yeah, so that's probably the 2 dirtiest jobs really, which is a bit coincidental on that question. So the next question we've got coming is how to stop pipes freezing this winter. So really, to stop pipes freezing in the winter is not have them outside. That is the first rule of stopping them from freezing. So they're either outside or in the loft. So if you can minimise the amount of pipework that you have outside and have it within the envelope of your property, that is the best way to stop pipes freezing this winter. Let's just say you don't have a choice. So if you've got let's say an outside tap, probably the most common thing, have minimal amount of copper pipe. So I've seen it where they'll come out and then have a big piece of copper pipe, then the outside tap. So that's the vulnerable piece, really, the copper tube as it comes through. Now, whenever we fit an outside tap, and it's a bit of a common practice within the plumbing industry, you have an isolation valve. So when we're entering these winter periods where we're not going to be using the outside tap, locate your isolation valve for that tap on the inside, turn it off, and then open up the tap on the outside to allow the pressure of the water to escape. And then if there is any expansion, the tap is already open, and then that in theory can then sort of just move up the pipe and come through, and that will minimize those pipes from freezing. Obviously, if you do have any pipes that are running around in a loft, because lofts do get very, very cold if we do have a cold winter, then the pipes must have some lagging on them as well. So they've come up with all sorts of stuff over the years, like a pipe trace, I think it was called, which is like a electric wire that warms up, and then you can put that into waste pipes, for instance, just to make sure that if it does freeze, it does get really, really cold, this heater element will warm the water up a little bit as it does. And probably the biggest callback here we get at Gaslec, being a predominantly heating company, is frozen condensed pipes. So the 21.5 mil or 22 mil little white pipe typically runs out. That will freeze before the larger pipes do. Now, I'm not saying that the water is completely different in these larger pipes. In theory, The larger diameter, the bigger the surface area of the water, which means actually the quicker it will cool if it's coming out of a boiler. It's part of the condense production, which is coming straight from the burner, which actually means it's coming out quite warm. And if you put it into a larger diameter pipe, like a 40 mil pipe, as it's passing through, the surface area across, because it's the same amount of water, would increase, and in theory it will cool down quicker. But the theory, but the mindset about it all is we have these, and certainly here down in the south, we have these little blasts of cold, and the condense will freeze inside the pipe, but it's got more to freeze before it blocks, and that's the theory on going for the larger pipe. You can start lagging the pipes as they come outside, but ultimately you're going to get to a point, no matter what you do, if it's cold, it's going to freeze because it's outside. And certainly here at Gaslec, when we're fitting boilers, we try and run the condense internally as much as we can. That's always the first option for terminating the condense. But if it does run out, have a look at maybe for a short term, if it does freeze up and we do have a big cold snap, is there a way that you could get that condensed water not going outside and manage it from the inside of the property for the short term and then get it back together again? But whoever fitted your boiler, certainly give them a call and ask them if you're concerned about it, how you can do that in an emergency. So the last question we got is, do smart meters actually save you money? The answer is no. The only thing that will save you money on your energy bills is either pay less per unit or use less units. And that is absolutely it. All a smart meter will do is it will show you how much energy you're using to boil the kettle, how much money is it to leave the lights on, how much money is it to run your air conditioning system for a couple of hours. And that is how you save the money, is being more frugal with what you're doing. So it's nothing. So there's no energy. There's no money saving aspect to the meter, only showing you that. Now, some people, certainly our elderly clients, can get a little bit focused and fixated on it, and they start sitting around in the cold. They'll only have one cup of tea a day because they can physically see the money coming over. The money it's actually costing them to do so. So if you do have any elderly relatives that do have these smart meters that are displaying this out, just be mindful. Are they living within their own means, but are they living comfortably and safely? Because they're trying to, they're too fixated on saving the money, as it were. So, so hopefully that answers that question. So, pipe cutters, they're in their history section here. So I had a bit of a think about what we can talk about in the history section of the Gaslec podcast. And so one of the things that we all use here in the plumbing and heating industry are pipe cutters. So, and there's a couple of types really. So we've got some bigger pipes that we work with. So we have these rotary cutters with a screw handle, and you clamp them on, you spin them a couple of times, and you give it an extra tighten, you spin it and you tighten. Rather than these, like the pipe slice, the automatic cutters that you'll clip on, and basically the little wheels like sprung loaded. And so as you clip them on, you spin, 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 and with a little tiny spring, it's pushing against the cutting wheel, against the material, lots and lots of turns, and it cuts through a tree. So that's what we're going to be talking about really on the pipe cutter side. So before we had pipe cutters, plumbers used saws and chisels and files to cut down our lead, iron, and then more recently our copper pipes. So if you can imagine, what's really important is that we have a nice, clean, square, and filed end to our pipes. And whatever the jointing method that we're doing, we've got to keep that nice and even and clean. So we're doing that there. You're cutting tapers on them. You're not cutting them, even if you're cutting them, and you're starting to squash and deform the pipes. And then the risk of leaks for pod joints are really, really, really high. And we can see that in whatever we do here. So Walter J. Sanders patented the pipe cutter with a cutting wheel in 1922, and the Reed Manufacturing Company also invented other types of cutters. The early pipe cutters were designed for steel pipes, and later inventions focused on new materials and designed for efficiencies on and specific materials. David J. Butler in 1968 filed a patent for a pipe cutter with a screw clamp in the USA. I think that come around in the early 70s, and that'd be the one that we can still buy today. That has the cutting wheel, and it has some like rollers, and we wind it on, turn it, tighten it up, turn it, and that's great for multiple size of pipe. I think my one here goes up to 68 mil, I think. And I wouldn't use that on really anything less than 28 as it comes down in size. It's quite a big chunky sort of thing really, but it's got a deburrer on one end, and it's got a sort of a hand tightening wheel on the other. And it's really important on those, you don't give it too much beans at the beginning, because that will start to, certainly on the copper pipe, it will start to deform it as you come through. And it's all about letting the cutter do the work, rather than getting in there and then having white knuckles trying to wind it all the way around. Monument Tools were the national distributors for these cutters in the 1970s. But they wanted an international market, so they approached a company called Copex, and they used the brand name of Pipe Slice. So, and that's what we call them here in the top. Oh, have you got that 22 slice? You've got that 15 slice or that 10 slice? And that's here what we use as a bit of a trade, a bit like the Hoover for the vacuum cleaner. But once the patent had run out and expired, Monument Tool started to produce their own sort of rotary pipe cutters, and they come out with this clamp style, and I think we normally see them like a yellow and red, a bit of a thinner one where the pipe slice is quite big, probably around sort of about the 40 mil in width, and that will then spin us round. These ones are a lot narrower, and they've got this outside piece here. And then you sort of slide it over, clamp it on, and then you rotate it around with your hand. And they actually did come up with like a ratchet that you actually pop over the side of the cutter, and you can actually use it with a handle for those tight to reach places as well. I've never got one, I've never used one, I've never had one. I don't know even if they're still in existence. But over the years, there's been various different ideas for rotary cutters. They did even come out with one that was 15 and 22 mil built into one cutter, but it's never really took off, and it was produced by Monument, and that was discontinued. We've got one here, the battery-powered electric cutter, which will do from 15 mil to 28, made by Milwaukee. Great bit of kit. Don't ever put your finger in it and pull the trigger, because it will try and absolutely tear the tip off. So be really careful with it, and make sure it don't start winding up and down as the blade starts to wear. Now, these battery cutters are absolutely fantastic if you've got lots of cuts to do on pipe that's sort of out of situ, because it will go in, does create a bit of vibration as it's spinning round. So if it's in a bit of a situation where you've got things connected to the other end, it may cause you a bit of drama with leaky seals that have been sort of loosened through the vibration. But they're fantastic pipe cutters. Like everything, it's all got a place, hasn't it, in the toolbox. So the downside with those cutters is they leave you a very square cutter rather than the tapered cut. So we had a job in a food factory, and we was running some gas pipe. We was using press fit, and was using the gas press, and we had a few leaks, and actually it came from where we used that rotary cutter, because it didn't give us that taper. When we slid it on, it must have just caught and nicked the rubbers, and which then allowed the gas leaks to happen. We had to go around, locate them, cut them out, and start again. But that was all because of the square cut that it leaves. Now, if you're using a 22 mil pipe for a 15 to sleeve a bit of 15, then these are actually great, because it don't put that taper on the end. The 15 fitting like a soldered end feed fitting, will actually fit inside. And the same for the 2822 principle. It'll actually slide in. So if you've got a PRV or something, you want to keep it tight to the wall, you can actually have part of the solder joint actually inside the fitting, inside the wall, creating it as tight as possible. And when you use the sort of hand rotary types, it puts a taper on it and it doesn't allow that pipe to go in unless you deburr it and widen it back out. But that's great for your sort of the things with rubbers in, really, when you're putting them inside. And of course, then over the years, or recently years, there's been specialist cutters for multi-layered water pipes, which is our plastic water pipes. And when you look at the side, they're multi-layered. It's got various, about 3 different layers of material, and our plastic water pipes as well. So look very similar to the rotary cutters, but they've got basically a little tiny blade in there, and you clip it onto a bit of 40mm pipe, and you spin it, and it goes. Personally, I don't have any of those type here at Gaslec. I have the plastic guillotine types where you can put it on and then give it a little twist and then just pop it through, and we use a lot of those here. But yeah, maybe I could be converted if I did practice with the plastic rotary type cutters. So there we are. So winter is nearly here, the crazy season, and it's a big kick-off for everybody. So I'm recording this on Sunday, the 21st of September. So we've got highs today of about 17, but overnights are in single digits this week. So certainly here at Gaslec, we're getting ready for the heating calls, and we already had some for last week that are coming in here about pumps and 3-port valves and things not working. So I have 5 top tips to give you before calling out a heating engineer this winter. So the first one, does your heating system have pressure in it? So if you've got a sealed heating system, if you have a combination boiler, if you have a system boiler, typically what you're looking for is on the front of the boiler, do you have a pressure gauge? So it would normally be a circle about this big. Some are digital, I'll give you that. Some, if you look underneath the boiler and look up in either of the corners, left or right, you might see a little gauge on there going from 0 or nothing up into through a grey scale to a red. So if you've got like a, let's say, a Worcester Bosch boiler, like a Green Star, so the bottom left-hand corner, so bottom right-hand corner, sorry, you'll have like a pressure gauge. Is that pressure gauge within that little green window there? So if you've not been using your heating system over the winter, over the summer, the pressure in the system can drop down. So before calling us out, do you have enough pressure within your heating system, and get that checked? The second thing is, so you check, you got gravity. If you've got a gravity system, you don't have that anyway, but is the timer and the thermostat turned on for your heating? Now, we have had many a commercial job and domestic job. We've turned up and literally we've turned the program on from off to on, and that basically is it. And you could save yourself all of that downtime and save yourself a call out fee as well, just by double checking, is it calling for heat, yes or no? Is the thermostat turned up and calling for heat, yes or no? So the third thing is, can you hear the pump running? So there's a couple of things about that there. Maybe not you could do anything about that, but you can really relate that bit of information to whoever's doing your plumbing and heating. So if we've got a gravity system and you go into the airing cupboard and you've turned on your heating and nothing's happened, but you can hear the pump running, you can feel a slight vibration from it. You can see there's a little light on it. So some have little lights for their speed rate, for their speed running on there as well. So if the light on, it's making a noise, making a normal noise, you can hear it running, not sort of gurgling or sloshing away. When you can then call up your heating engineer, whoever there be, or one of us, one of the team here at Gaslec, you can then report that, and then so we can sort of narrow it down. Maybe it's a 3-port, maybe the boiler is not responding to the switch live because it's not recognising the flow of water. It's because the fan hasn't fired up. with inside the boiler, or we've got a error code for like a low water pressure. So yeah, can you hear the pump running in wherever it'll be? Maybe even inside the boiler if it's built inside in a combi or a system. Number 4, some of the rads are cold, but some are actually working. So that then tells us that if we've got some radiators that are working and some that are not, if we have, and this is a bit of a top tip here from me at Gaslec. So if we've got upstairs radiators that are working and all of downstairs are cold, and we've got a normal system where it's not zoned off up and down, so it's all in one big circuit, generally that is a flow issue, like a pump problem of some description. If the pump's running weak or is slightly blocked and it's not getting the full efficiency of the water being pushed through the pipes, then what will happen is heat will naturally rise. So as it's passing not as quickly as it should, it will take the path of least resistance, a bit like a lazy teenager, and it will pass through and it will do the upstairs and then sort of circulate itself back round again. If you're getting the odd random one that's not really working, make sure that the radiator valve, if you have a thermostat valve, is all the way open. Now, I did a boiler yesterday, and where they've had the heating's been off in a commercial premises all week, all summer. Some people have turned down the thermostats, and what that creates is a little metal pin inside gets stuck in the closed position. So if you're confident enough to do it, you can unscrew the head of the thermostat by hand, no tools required, and see if that pin moves. So you can give it a push with something, put a thimble on your finger, give it a push up or down, whichever way around it's the orientation of it, and just see if that pin's moving. Another thing I do is I'll give it what we call a engineering tap. So obviously if you've got the pump running, we've got some system pressure running there, and with my spanner I'll give the radiator valve a tap. I don't absolutely clout the pipes because that'll split them and then we'll end up with a disaster, but I'll give it a engineering tap, as they're called. And then what I'll do is I'll touch the pipes before my tap and they'll fill for the heat, give it an engineering tap, give it 30 seconds and feel them again on both the pipes. Are they starting to warm up? If one starts to warm up, you know the engineering tap has started to work. And that's so, stuck valves, the little rubber seats can stuck. You may need to get the valves changed there as well. And my last, number 5, top tip for you guys is probably the most common one we get. Wireless thermostats, wireless programs are really, really popular and really common. They are a fantastic bit of kit, but they take batteries. And one thing the batteries go flat. So have you a flashing battery symbol on your wireless thermostat, on your wireless programmer? If you have a flashing battery symbol, get the batteries changed. The display might be working, but it ain't transmitting. And you can get the opposite, where it can turn the heating on, but it won't turn the heating off because it's not sending the signal to do so. So make sure you check for the batteries, and if you've got the symbol, get them changed. Even if it's working, it ain't going to work for long. So take them out, get the batteries changed. They should last a couple of years, so it's not the end of the world, and we'll break the bank there for you guys. So that's me rattling on for 20 odd minutes. So thank you very much indeed for listening. I hope this episode has been a big help and will be a big help for you guys out there. If you've got any questions or you want to be a guest on the show, email us at podcast@gaslec.net. And if we can help with any domestic, commercial, plumbing, heating or air conditioning needs, we're here within the Southeast. Email us at office@gaslec.net. Have a fantastic week, guys. Thank you very much and goodbye.